Hi, Andrew. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us on our coffee chats, and very excited to learn a little bit about a little bit about Bryant, and also about the admissions process in general from you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Andrew, this is a super special one for me, being a Bryant alumni myself. So very excited to have you here with us. And just to kickstart, today's coffee chat, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And wonderful to be joined by a Bryant alum. So I appreciate you setting this up. So my name is Andrew Kupec. I'm the Associate Director of International Admission at Bryant University. I've worked in higher education for about 9 years now. So I've read applications from all over the world and pretty familiar with the admission process and the college search process, and then ultimately the selection process for students. So hopefully the topics we talk about and some of the little advice that I give will help you in your college search and making the right decision of where you want to go moving forward. But certainly have a passion for international education and a belief in terms of how that can improve our world moving forward.
Lovely. Excited to get started, and I'm going to just dive right in. Andrew, one of the popular questions we see as education consultants at NexTrack is, how does Bryant review test optional? It would be very helpful if you could share some data with us here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bryant has been SAT, ACT test optional for 10 years now. So this isn't a recent change for us. It's a decision we made well before the pandemic. So there's really been no shift in our application review process. I know for students and families, the idea of not submitting a test score is something you might be apprehensive about, or not truly think that colleges are going to value your application in the same light. And I promise you, if you apply test optional, at least at Bryant University, you have the same chance of admission whether you're applying with or without your SAT scores. And the way I would think of it is the average SAT at Bryant's about 1240 now in our latest class, right? So I always tell students, you should submit your SAT scores if it's a good reflection of your academic ability as a student, right? So if you're a top student in your class and you have close to the highest marks and you're taking a challenging curriculum, even if you have an average SAT score in 1240, you might not want to submit that because it's not a good reflection of what you've done in the classroom. Now, adversely, if you're maybe more of an average student, but you took the SAT and you had a well above average scores and it outperforms what your academic performance in the classroom has been, then it makes sense for you to submit your SAT score because it's going to be a helpful data point on the application. So I promise you, if you apply test optional, right, it's one less data point that we have in the review. We're not taking that into consideration. We're not saying, oh, they didn't submit their SAT score, there must be something wrong here. Once you introduce that data point, then it can impact your chance for admission and your chance for merit or academic-based scholarship. Right? So if the data point is there, it's taken into consideration, it can help or it can hurt. But if it's not there, we're looking at your academic performance, your academic trajectory, the courses you've selected, your recommendation, your essay, and all the other pieces of your application that make up the review. So we really believe in that policy. It's kind of a product of, I think, some of the courses and the academic philosophy here at Bryant. It works very well for our students. So going back 10 years in terms of data, if you look at it, the number one indicator of student success is academic success in high school. Right, so your high school, what we would call GPA, is accurately being reflected whether or not you're submitting SATs. Right, so we're seeing students, their GPA pretty much is carrying over to their performance at Bryant University in the classroom. Pre-pandemic, about 50% of our students were applying SAT, ACT optional. Throughout the pandemic, because of some of the challenges around accessibility to the SAT, I think that percentage has risen up to about 65% of our incoming class has applied test optional. I would say proportionally, it's usually a smaller percentage of international students that are applying test optional, and that could be for a variety of different reasons. But I'm telling you right now, you have the same chance of that. I can think of specific cases where students hurt their chance of admission or actually received less scholarship because they did submit their SAT score. So maybe the opposite of what you would actually think in terms of the review there. What you would see too is the GPA. The GPA at Bryant went up to about a 3.5 for this incoming class. And the average GPA of test optional students was about a 3.41 on a 4.0 scale, right? So what that means to me as well is that it's not that we're looking at test optional students and requiring them to have much higher academic performance than students that are submitting their test scores, right? So that goes to show you that when that data point is there, it's truly not being considered, right? There's not a variance in terms of the grades that we're looking for from test optional applicants compared to students that are submitting their SAT. And don't get me wrong, if you do phenomenal on the SAT, that is someone that can help your application, but it's not a priority in our application review process, because there's a lot of other ways that you can prove that you can be a good fit and a good student at Bryant University.
Lovely, that's so helpful to know. And I think that also helps us convey to our students applying to Bryant University how to move forward with or without, reporting test scores. Thank you, Andrew. Moving forward to the next part of this, coffee chat is popular majors at Bryant. And I know my time at Bryant, the international business major has been one of the most sought after majors. What makes it so popular at Bryant?
Absolutely, and you're definitely right. In many ways, the International Business Program is a flagship program at Bryant University. It was ranked number 20 in the country by U.S. News and World Report, number 11 in the United States by USA Today College Factual. And I'm probably not supposed to have favorites, but it's certainly my favorite program to talk about because how structured it is, and because students leave with direct hands-on experiences that will, prepare them for the next step in their career. So the IB program, and the nice part about it too, is you can be an international business student and still have a functional concentration within business. You can be an international business student with a concentration in finance or digital marketing or management or entrepreneurship, right? So you still have that core functional knowledge in the business area, just everything you're being taught is through an international lens. I also think it's important that Bryant University as a whole, about 30% of our faculty identify as global citizens, right? So you're being taught by experts and professionals that have an international viewpoint, right? And there might be, I believe it's a higher percentage within the IB program, and there might be others that just have international business experience that are going to be teaching you. So it's very intentional in that way. So in your second year, you're getting this core foundational knowledge, right? So that all the aspects of business through that international lens. But where the program really starts to differentiate is in the third year, students have the opportunity to study abroad, and then they will actually do an internship in that country. So we have Bryant University sites in the south of France, in Spain, in Italy, in China. We have previously done programs in Argentina and Chile. So students have the opportunity to take courses there from other Bryant faculty. The program is very customized to the student. It's based on the proficiency of the language that student is studying in that particular country. And you will be doing an internship with international business implications while you're spending a semester abroad. A little bit different for international students because you are already studying abroad, so you do have the opportunity to opt out of that program where our domestic or U.S. students wouldn't have that option. But that would be replaced where you're doing a hands-on project with a company here that's U.S. based or with a professor. Right? So now you have that internship experience. You'll come back and you go through what Dean Madan Arjula describes as the airplane simulator. Right? We're not going to let you fly the plane until you're trained properly. So you go through this pretty complex simulation business simulation, and you're working from part of a team and solving an international business problem, right? So all the experiences from that, you're really running a whole corporation, right? So everything from, worrying about the stock price to the customer service, and that prepares you for your final year of the program, where you're actually going to be working in a consultancy role for an international business, right? So businesses come to Bryant University with problems that have international implications, and our students are working directly with those companies. They visit them on site. They have to present to the companies. They have to come up with their final solution, and their grade actually comes from those international businesses. So your professor almost becomes a partner, but you're really working for this company and organization in that final year. And that leads to some good internship opportunities, some job opportunities, some good networking connections for our students. There's an extreme example of that is an alum of ours wanted to diversify their business into Vietnam, and he actually paid for the students to actually go to Vietnam and do work in that particular place. So to me, now you're walking away with an international perspective, a well-rounded business education. You still have a specific core functional knowledge in a particular area of business, but you have these two very unique, specific international business experiences. Now, when you walk into an interview with a company or organization, or if you're going on to grad school, and they ask you a specific example-based question, you can say, I'm a team player because of when I worked with this particular international business, or I developed my leadership skills or my communication skills when I was studying abroad in Spain and I did a particular It's a very structured program, but the most important is you're going to leave with that real world experiences that I think really puts our students ahead, especially in the international business space.
That's I was just going to say that sounds amazing, because it sounds like there's so much practical knowledge and application based sort of work that's going on, which is just amazing to hear. Sorry, Devanshi, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I can totally relate to this, because I remember during my foundation year at Bryant, my first year, I took a business class where I actually received a seed funding from the Goss Foundation of around $5,000. And I was the Goss awardee of that year. And we actually took our business to the next level, and the business still exists till today. So it just goes to show you that the business class you take in your freshman year can be with you even 10 years later.
Amazing.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And Devanshi, you know it better than I do, but yeah, Bryant is very career focused and hands-on and practical experience based in terms of the way we're conducting a lot of our courses, especially in the business area.
Awesome. So Andrew, in terms of, the types of students who would fit in well at Bryant, what would you say about that? What's the culture at Bryant? What kind of students would you say, based on their personality, based on the interests that they have, would enjoy their time at Bryant? What are the types of students that you're looking for?
It's a great question. I think, so Bryant is about 3,400 undergraduate students. So, compare that to an incoming class at Bryant's about 850 students. So maybe compare that to your graduating class in high school. But usually on the grand spectrum of higher education in the United States, that's on the smaller, maybe what I would describe as small, medium size university, right? So you have to want to be in a place that's very relationship driven, right? Your professors are going to know your name. You're going to meet new people throughout, but you're going to see familiar faces. It's a very collaborative environment. We really push, teamwork and presentations and scenarios where you have to work with others, because that's what you're going to experience in the real world. So personality-wise, it tends to attract students that really want to build those relationships. Bryant is, I just described it as very career-focused, and I'd also describe it as competitive as well. But sometimes we think of competitiveness in like a negative connotation or a selfish way. And to me at Bryant, it's very like supportive competitiveness, if that makes sense. So I think, you have to want to be in that type of environment, especially because it becomes a very business focused institution for many of our students. But it's also, I think, important that even though some of our business programs are really strong, we do have a variety of great programs in the arts and sciences, and all of our students are combining business with the arts and sciences. So you also have to want to study different things and diversify your education. It's a very residential campus, so it produces a very traditional college life experience. So you should be, if you're looking at Bryant, you're probably going to be a student that wants to be involved in clubs and organizations and social events on the weekends and athletics. So it definitely attracts that type of student as well. That's probably the way I would describe some of the culture.
Yeah, that's great to know. I mean, it sounds, everything that you're saying is something that's so important for students to hear before they're deciding on what type of schools they want to apply to and whether or not they finally want to apply to Bryant. And I can think of so many students that we work with who would value that, who value personal relationships, who value a campus environment and setting. So that's such an important factor that students should be considering before they finalize their application college list, I'd say. Great. So just before the application, a lot of students that we talk to, we also discuss something called demonstrated interest with them, which of course it means visiting the campus, perhaps attending some webinars. Now that's not always easy for international students to do. So I would say this is a two-part question. One would be, is demonstrated interest important from an admissions perspective? And two, how can international students do that and show to the admissions team that that's a school that they're interested in?
Absolutely, and demonstrated interest is a really interesting topic. And at Bryant University, we certainly do track demonstrated interest. I would say it's not overly important in our admission process. I would say for 99% of students, demonstrated interest is not something that is going to change the ultimate outcome on their admission decision. It's exactly for the reason you said too, right? If a student, we're in Smithville, Rhode Island, so if a student comes to Providence up to visit, and then a student from Mumbai, if they don't visit, are we going to hold them against that because they have to travel however many thousand miles to be here versus the student that only had to make a drive up the road? So there's some flaws in demonstrated interest in it as well. I would say it really only comes into play for students that maybe were applied early action and were deferred to regular decision, or students that took the time to do an interview and something through that interview revealed really important information that would change the way we view that. So really students that, average GPA at Bryant's about a 3.5, average SAT is about a 1240. So students that are borderline or maybe lower on the academic profile, some of that demonstrated interest can start to help their chances in the admission process. But again, I would encourage you to attend webinars, to reach out to myself. I'll be traveling around the world to do interviews. We do interviews on Zoom. We'll provide certainly plenty of virtual opportunities to visit Bryant University. I would encourage you to attend those so you can learn more and help yourself in the college search. But I wouldn't feel this over need to because you have to prove your demonstrated interest. Most students are admitted or not admitted, regardless of the demonstrated interest. But I can think of those 5, maybe 10 students per year that did have an impact on their admission decision because they were able to effectively demonstrate their interest. And most of the time, that the biggest way to do that and make a change is through the optional interview process that we offer.
Yeah, that's great to hear and very insightful as well, because it makes sense. Someone who's perhaps on the borderline but is able to express why they're interested, in Bryant and show you that they deserve to be on campus and attend those same classes as their other peers. Of course, I think that can make a difference. But I think we hear you. It sounds like, that's not really a major factor that plays in. It might make a difference in certain circumstances and certain situations, but it can't hurt anyone. It can only help them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
Lovely. Moving to my next question, Andrew. Early action, early decision, binding, not binding, regular decision. With so many choices when applying, what do you recommend students to do, and how should they move ahead?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I always warn students that we make it so hard on them in the U.S. because we all have our different admission, deadlines, and we'll consider you for scholarship under these deadlines, or we encourage you to apply this way, depending on the school's selectivity and their processes. But I can tell you, at Bryant University, specifically to international students, if they know they're going to apply to Bryant, I typically advise them to apply early action, because that's a non-binding agreement that's going to get you a decision earlier in the process and allow you more time to make a proper evaluation of if you want to attend Bryant, if you are admitted. Now, we don't make it between early action and regular decision. We don't make distinctions in terms of scholarships, in terms of admission. If you could apply to Bryant on September 1st, 2020 for the following year, or you could apply February 1st at 11:59 p.m., and we're going to view your application in the same light. You're going to be admitted if you're deserving to. You're going to receive scholarship if your application dictates that level of scholarship. Now, we have early decision 1 and early decision 2. Those are, as we know, our binding deadlines. That does change the application review process a little bit, because the easiest way to think about it is you're essentially taking yourself out of the applicant, right? We're reviewing you in a silo, pretty much saying you can do the work at Bryant or you can't do the work. So the admission rates for early decision students is certainly going to be higher because of that commitment you're making to the institution, and you're not compared to the competitiveness of the rest of the pool. Now, I only recommend students to apply early decision, whether at Bryant or any school, if you know that's the only place that you want to go. It is a binding agreement. We don't want students to feel forced into having to attend a particular place. If you know you want to be there, apply early decision. It can only help you in the application process. But if you want to evaluate options, see where you're admitted, look at the financial discrepancies of what's being asked for you to pay to attend particular institutions, the early action route will allow you to compare and contrast some of those options that you're going to have. That's the way I would think of it.
Lovely. That really helps and provides context to students making this tough choice of whether or not they should go ahead with the binding agreement. Our last and final question, Andrew, for today. We're working with a lot of students who are in the process of getting their teachers to write letters of recommendations. As an admissions officer, do you have any tips here? Yeah,
my tip would be, one, to ask as early as possible, right? Usually the teacher that you're asking is also being asked to write a large number of recommendations for students. The quicker you can identify that, usually the better it's going to be. Students, I think, probably often think that they should ask the teacher that they had the best grade in their class, and that's not always the case. If you really worked hard in a particular class to improve your grade, or you went to extra help and worked with that teacher in a one-on-one capacity, or you just have a good relationship with that teacher, most likely that teacher is going to write a stronger letter of recommendation because they know you on a more personal level. So even if your grade was lower in that class versus another grade, that teacher recommendation might be better. And then I think the number one advice I can give you is, I call it a brag sheet, or you can think of it as a short resume. When you ask your teacher to write that letter of recommendation, just give them a quick synopsis of what you're interested in and what activities and clubs and things you do outside of the classroom, because the teacher's not going to remember that. And again, they're writing however many recommendations. So if they have that, they're going to write more detailed information. It's going to come off when we read it that they know you a little bit more, and that can just help enhance the letter of recommendation.
Some great insights there, Andrew. We appreciate that, because especially the one that you said about the grades, it's really important for students to understand that it's not always important to pick a teacher where you've done the best. It's also important to think about what your relationship with that teacher is, how well that teacher probably knows you as a student as well and as a person. So yeah, I appreciate you being here and so much insight, and I really think this is going to be so helpful for all the students. But yeah, thanks from my side for being here and for answering these questions as well.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And Devanshi, when I'm in Bangalore next, we'll have to get you some good Bryant alumni gear. So
yes, please do.